Okay, awesome.
We just
Hey,
did, yeah.
everybody, welcome. It is Black Introvert Week. I am Jeri Bingham, the founder of Black Introvert Week. Decided that we needed our own week after in my own journey, just talking to different people about introversion, and understanding that we have so much in common. I thought that what happened to me in my life as a Black introvert, especially in workspaces, was rare. But the more I talked about it, I found out so many people were having the same issues and challenges that I was. So I thought, why not create a week to raise awareness about this special segment of the population, to talk about not only our challenges, but our skills and our assets, because what we have is so powerful. And I think we don't know it. And so we need to shine a light on our attributes, our expertise, and we need to help others. We need to pass the torch. We need to pay it forward. And so that is the reason for creating Black Introvert Week. Um, so I am Jeri. My background is marketing. My love and passion project is to talk about introversion. I have a podcast called Hush Loudly, and hopefully I'll have a book soon. And my passion, my desire is just to help uplift um, and help empower introverts, and also to educate the extroverted society that we live in about us. So it's all about inclusivity. I'd like to introduce the panel. I'm going to start now with Deidra Smith, Deidra Wade. She's a human resources executive with over 25 years experience partnering with business leaders in private and nonprofit sectors. Deidra worked with organizations in creating HR strategy and solutions to meet organizational goals. She's passionate about helping individuals reach their full potential. She has helped the unemployed and underemployed market themselves to obtain careers that are financially fulfilling and rewarding. She teaches English to adult learners in Japan, China, and Brazil in order to excel their careers. She is also a published author of a children's book, Where's My Mommy's Hair, which is on Amazon. She's the co owner of Sign Dreamers. Sign Dreamers brings joy through personalized yard signs, and she's in Illinois in the Chicago area. Um, and then let's jump now to Courtney, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Jerry. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Peterson. I'm also a career HR professional and human resources executive. I have experience across a variety of industries, from nonprofits to corporate spaces. And overall, my goal is pretty singular in how I show up for this work, which is creating workplaces where humans can thrive. I want all the humans to be able to thrive at work. I am a trained leadership coach, and in addition to serving as a chief people and culture officer for a nonprofit in Washington, D.C., I also run my own boutique consultancy where I do leadership coaching, I do conflict mediation and other HR consulting, and also 2 semesters out of each year, I teach part-time at Georgetown University. I teach graduate students there. And currently work for a company that is all remote full time. And so I'm dealing with a geographically dispersed workforce that lives across 25 states in the United States. I have led large teams, I have led small teams, I've been an HR department of one, and very passionate about this work. So I would say my passion projects have to do with coaching, particularly coaching women leaders. So that's like my favorite thing to do. Delighted to be here. I'm an introvert, been an introvert my whole life, and can't wait to talk more about this journey.
Thanks, Courtney. Janice?
Awesome. All right, my name is Janice Chaka, and I am currently in the northeast of the United States, but have lived in Mexico and the United Kingdom and a bunch of other countries around the world. My background is in HR as well, mainly leading international groups for various sized organizations from the HR and recruiting sort of standpoint. And the work that I do now is with the Career Introvert. That is my own company. I do a lot of training within organizations on bridging the communication gap between introverts and extroverts to help them make their teams better, because communication is the root of everything. And the more we know about how other people work, and putting together a strategy on how to do that within teams makes everything better. I also have a podcast called The Traveling Introvert. It's out every Tuesday, just 5 minutes. And it's about me running my business remotely. And I've been working remote since before it became hip. I also have a book, and I keep in touch with the HR community by running Disrupt HR Denver, which is basically like TED Talks, but for HR. And speaking of TED Talks, I did a TEDx talk on why the workplace should maybe be better for introverts than it currently is. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janice. I want to start this off because I read this article that really annoyed me. And so I thought I would just read a little bit from it to start this conversation. So the article's title was 15 Jobs Introverts Should Avoid at All Costs. And it was written by Jenny Cohen, and it was posted on MSN.com. It was posted 7 months ago, but also posted again on February 10th. So the jobs that she said introverts should avoid are flight attendant, sales rep, event planner, real estate agent, job recruiter. Okay, so we have three people on this call whose backgrounds are HR, who recruits, customer service rep, lawyer. My lawyer is an introvert. PR specialist, that's me. My bachelor's degree is in public relations. I'm PR, marketing, communications all day long. Journalist, registered nurse, waiter, teacher, social media manager, HR specialist. So again, y'all HR people, and greeter. So this just really bothered me because I hate that things like that are out here in the atmosphere and could possibly impact a younger, more impressionable person who will think, oh, I should not go into HR or PR because this article says that. So doing things like this will help us combat these sort of, I feel like, stereotypes and these stigmas that are out there. I just want to give an example of me interviewing an experience I had, and then we'll jump into what these HR specialists say. So there was a position that I had applied for at a large system, and I interviewed with 27 people total. So it was group interviews, groups of 4 and 5. First it was HR, then all across the place, the institution. Then it got down to me and one other candidate. I was the final. I wanted this job so bad. I was like, this is my job. It was a vice president role. It was branding and marketing, all the stuff that I love. And so the HR person was really rooting for me. I could just tell. So I did not get the job. So he called me after and we talked about it. And he said, I just really thought you were going to get it. I'm not supposed to talk to you about this. And he said, but maybe you just didn't interview well. And he said, but I know you interviewed well with everyone else on the way there. And then he was like, or maybe it just wasn't the right fit. I think it was because of my introversion. So I do turn it up a notch. So we all have an introverted side where we lean our preference, but we also have an extroverted side because we live in a world and a society that rewards and celebrates extroversion. So we have to. So I like kind of beef it up. I try to be more animated. I try to be a little extra because I know that's how people look at you, and what maybe they expect or think that's what they need for the role. But I believe to this day, I think that that person probably had more of it than I did. And probably that's the reason why I didn't get that role. But that role wasn't for me anyway. So I accept that. I accept that.
Right.
Everything is not for you. And so I'd love to ask the panel, you three HR pros and executives, what should we do as introverts who we may not want to always toot our horn? We, I think are very humble. So, how do we in an interview stand out? Is there something that you can tell us that we should do? Um, to just kind of shine a light on who we are and our experiences.
All right.
I can start.
Yeah, everyone's like,
Oh,
who's going to
go
jump
ahead,
in
Janice.
first?
Go ahead, Janice.
I would say that it's all in the prep. Yes, you mentioned that we might be humble. Go ask people who you work with what shines out to them, because what shines out to them will be different to what shines out to you. And come at it at an angle of, I've helped person, client, human, organization get this result. It's not about you, it's about what you've given and brought to the table, because really that's all the organization cares about. I mean, they're supposed to care about you as a human, but we know 90% of the time they don't. So it's about what you can bring to the table, and having that mindset of, this is how I helped other humans, might help take the pressure of it, you thinking that you're bragging. But having it come from other people also helps sort of bolster and give you accountability that, hey, yes, you did this and these people noticed this about you. That's my quick 2 cents.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that, Janice. Um, Speaking from personal experience, it is a challenge to brag on yourself and to toot your own horn. So in interviews, I encourage introverts to not only share what they've done at other organizations, but give examples of what they've done. So if you've worked on a presentation or a training, you can supply that information to the interviewer. This is what I've done. This is what the result was of that. And this is how I impacted the company. So to focus on the bottom line and focus on how you've made an impact across the organization. And being an introvert sometimes helps because you listen, you understand, you process, and that helps you to be a little bit more comprehensive when you're navigating through operations.
I'm happy to just double click on all of this. I think I'm in total agreement. Interviews for introverts can feel like an unnatural space. It can feel a little like manufactured or contrived. And I think that's hard for us sometimes because we like to be able to lean into authenticity. So I would say, like, instead of trying to force the extroverted energy, like, I'm not going to say channel your inner Sasha Fierce because, like, not everybody can do that. What I would say is the preparation piece that Janice talked about. I over prepare for everything. It helps me feel confident. It helps me to be able to flow in situations where I need to be able to just talk. And so for interviews, I would tell an introvert to prepare your stories, to think about ways to tell stories that translate your experience into things that were actionable, just like Deidra said. I remember earlier in my career, I was a very young professional, and it was the first time I ever experienced being asked behavioral-based interview questions. And I was completely stumped in the interview. And it was an easy question. The question was like, tell me about a time you discovered a problem at work. And I was like, I have no idea how to answer this question. And I was sweating bullets because I wasn't prepared and I hadn't really thought about how to tell stories in an interview, or that behavioral-based interview questions were like a tool that HR professionals use to sort of understand candidates' prior behavior and fit for future roles. And so what it taught me was that I needed to prepare and think about my experiences and learn how to do storytelling to translate my work experiences into something that's actionable for the interviewer to understand. And so preparing those stories is I think, very helpful. And then on the other side of the interview, I would say don't underestimate the power of the follow-up. One of the things that introverts love to do is express themselves in writing. And so having a way to sort of wrap up how you felt about the interview or send a follow-up message. The follow-up thank you message is a lost art, I would say, as a CHRO. I don't get many thank you letters from people anymore. So when I do get thank you letters from people, even an email, it really stands out to me. Because I think many people don't do that anymore. And it's something, I have teenage daughters. I always tell them to send thank yous to people because it's like this lost art. But that follow-up message allows, as an introvert, us to showcase our strengths because we tend to be good in writing.
Thank you, ladies. And that's a perfect segue for this position that I applied for. It was an internship. It was a highly sought after role at a big global PR agency in Chicago, and I got selected, but let me tell you how. So my mom and I had gone to Sam's a couple days before, and I saw the biggest box of Arm& and Hammer baking soda I've ever seen in my life. So that relies on our skills of observation. I noticed it. It was freakish. It was weird to me. So I go on this interview, and the executive has a small box of Arm& Hammer baking soda on her desk. And so, because I'm curious, so we had the little interview, and then I said, "Can I ask why you have the baking soda on your desk?" And she said, "It's to inspire me. We're doing a pitch for that client. And so I want to have it here. Let me see it. And so that will, hopefully inspire me." So what did I do that night? I drove out to Sam's. I bought that big box of baking soda. I went to the post office the next day and mailed it. I think it was a 10-pound box. I got the job and I sent it with a nice thank you note that said, "Hope this inspires you." So when I got hired, when they were walking me around, they said, "You're the girl that sent the baking soda." So it was so meaningful, that one little thing. And then that's why I got the job. And she said that we found that so creative and so thoughtful. And so, yes, Courtney, so that definitely was a win. You can't always do that, especially when most things are virtual now, but use your skills of listening and observation to help you from the interview to the follow through after. Another thing, let's ask, we wanted to talk about how can you, and I loved about the storytelling, but is there anything you can do to show that you're the ideal candidate? So if you're looking at the job description and looking at what you have, is there anything that you can do to showcase that?
I think in the realm of preparation, I tend to sort of mark up the job posting and translate it to things I've done. I still print things and write on them. No, that's also a lost art too. But if it's a position that I think like, oh my gosh, like I'm a slam dunk for this, like I would be the perfect hire for this position, I try to make sure that the things that they're asking for are things that I feel like I have a deep capacity in, or the ability to have transferable experience, and to be able to, you have to be able to sell yourself in an interview. I mean, there is a piece of this that is sort of performance art. And one of the things that I do for my coaching clients is we do a lot of role plays in coaching. People need a space to practice things sometimes. And so as a coach, trying to hold that safe space for people to rehearse whatever it is, the thing that it is that they need to do. If it's an interview, if it's a conversation with their boss to ask for more money, if it's a conflict that they need to try to mediate, having a space to practice and rehearse, I think is very useful. So that preparation piece, I mean, I think you're going to hear that from this introverted panel a lot, that we spend a fair amount of time being prepared, as prepared as we can be.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
I
key.
wholeheartedly agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think as an introvert, we go above and beyond the call of duty when it comes to preparation.
Yep.
So, from personal experience, if I'm interviewing, I am digging deep into the website, seeing what their goals are, seeing what their core values are, their mission, their vision. I'm looking up all of the employees on LinkedIn. I'm pinging them, having conversations with them, saying, "Hey, I'm interviewing for this role. What would I need to know?" Especially if it's someone in my network. And looking at articles, looking at their share prices, looking at, are they trending upward or downward? I'm looking at uh, how they've been doing in the public's eye. I'm digging into all of that. So then when we're asked questions, I can tell them something that no other candidate has told them, or ask them something that no other candidate has asked them. And just showing how comprehensive you are in digging into that role and showing your passion, that usually sets you apart. And that's your strategic advantage in that regard.
I would marry those two things together. So something that I do with my cohorts is with the success visibility system is you mentioned your network. And as introverts, we need to be intentional in the networks that we create, and spending the time, putting time aside every week or every month to build those connections, because we heard the stories that connections get you jobs. Yeah, the interview and the resume, but who you know helps. And being able to ask someone, oh, hey, I'm applying at this job for this company, tell me about it, and then being comfortable enough to tell you about it, means that you have to start building those connections, not just when you're looking for a job, but be intentional about it on a regular basis. And the other part of it is that the preparation and knowing what you're going to say, taking the time every week to go ahead, and I put this in the chat, to look at what your accomplishments are and what you've done, because we get so lost in the weeds of everyday life that we forget what we've accomplished, even if it is getting out of bed in the morning and how that's affected the company's bottom line, because you should be updating your LinkedIn on a monthly basis of the things that you have changed and done and helped people with. And marrying that, looking at, oh, I've done all these things over these past year, helps you far easily translate that into why you should get that job than trying to think last minute, oh my goodness, what did I do last week? Because my memory is not that good anymore. So marrying those two things together is something I work with my cohorts, and it produces great results. And so I back up everything that everyone has said.
Thank you. Next, I want to ask you, have you ever seen instances where you thought a person's introverted personality style or introverted demeanor has worked against them? So I gave my example where I think I was still myself. I'm talking about that job I didn't get. I was still myself, but I did perk up a bit. I think I was a little more animated. So I was being flexible in that regard. And I didn't get the job, but have you seen instances where you believe it came down to maybe two candidates? And the person who was making the decision decided to go with the person that was more gregarious or more outgoing or more extroverted, in comparison to the introverted person who maybe if all things were equal on paper. Have you seen that?
Well,
I
I
would
mean,
say
I've seen, oh, I'm sorry, Janice, go ahead.
I was going to say, I just have a similar story where I applied for a HR job and they made me do a personality test. And they're like, oh, you can't possibly be in HR because you're this particular type of human according to the test. So there's no way you could do the job. And I was like, I've done this job for 3 other companies over the past 10 years, bigger than yours. Why is this an issue? And they just like moved on to other people because of the test, which boxes you into whatever they think, and therefore did not get the job. But it was fine. It's fine. Didn't want the job anyway. But no, go ahead.
I had an experience. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
No,
Courtney.
it's okay. I was going to just talk about I think it's a personal story, but it has to do with perhaps how my career has taken shape because of mentorship from a senior executive early in my career who encouraged me to speak up more and find my voice at work. I think that because I took his advice, I actually think that it allowed me to sort of have this career with the kind of upward ascension that I think at least it contributed to it. He was a white male executive in the company. He was very successful and very well respected. And he just took an interest in me. I was young, but he could tell I was hungry and I was smart, but I didn't talk. I didn't really talk in meetings. I would speak in one-on-one settings where I was very comfortable and I would share my ideas, but I wouldn't do those in meetings. And he pulled me aside and said, you have great ideas and you have leadership potential, but in the workplace, things happen in meetings. And you got to get in there. You have to participate. Your voice has to be heard in those spaces so that people know who you are and what you have to offer. And I had sort of an internal fight with this, like, because I didn't really want to do it. But I decided that I would experiment with it and try and sort of challenge myself in meetings to try to speak once, and then in another meeting, try to speak twice. And what I found was that it did sort of yield positive results. And so I think, like any muscle, you do have to develop it and hone it. I didn't force myself to move outside of authentically who I was, but I think I learned how to operate in a workplace that values meetings and values people, having something to contribute in those spaces. And I think him saying that to me kind of helped me reframe a little bit and think about, well, maybe I should try this. I think that he's giving me some advice. I will never be the person that I think can like do the extemporaneous speaking on stage like Steve Jobs walking back and forth. Like I don't ever see myself doing that because I just wouldn't feel comfortable. But I can be prepared and give a speech and I can talk in a meeting and offer a meaningful contribution. And I think as a leader now, as an executive, you then have the power to help reshape spaces because you have the actual authority to do so, right? And so what's really fun about being now at the top of an organization is I know how to pull other voices into conversations. I can read the room because of my intuition and being able to read energy and know how to pull in those quiet voices. Maybe not even in the meeting, maybe in the sidebar, right, to get their ideas. And so you get to actually reshape things when you become in the leadership position, which is why I encourage introverts to keep going. I'm like, keep going because we need you at the tops of organizations because then we can try to help reshape things when you have that kind of power. So
Yeah, I have to piggyback on that. And it's funny how now in that I'm in leadership, same thing. It's like I can now lead with it. And whereas before I would never say I was an introvert because it's such a stigma tied to the word. But now, because of social media, everybody's going to Google you anyway when they find out you're a cabinet. I'm sorry, when they find out that you're a candidate. But I can now lead with it. And it's funny how my boss, who's the president, it's like I can see how he's learned from me. And so he'll even just say things, he'll insert in the conversation something about introversion and extroversion. So that has gone really well for me. So I believe that our organization is more open to it because leaders are talking about it as if there's nothing wrong with it. Now, of course, that's not going to happen at every organization, but I agree when you're in leadership and able to make a difference and help people understand about the diversity of voices and the inclusion of voices, it definitely helps us move further along in society. So now I want to flip this over to the recruitment side. So, how do you, as recruiters and HR executives, approach interviewing candidates or guide your teams to recruit? So, you have people that have worked for you, and they may be under the impression that, oh, I need to go with the one that's the loudest or the funniest or the most gregarious. Is there a way that you train them to look for the candidate of substance? So have you had that? If you have a story, share it. But have you had that experience where you are sort of training or guiding someone on how to recruit?
I I have a really good example of that. I think it's so important to recognize substance over charisma. It's important to provide a space for candidates to express themselves in different forms. So, not only in a face to face interview, but also in different mediums so introverts can thrive. For example, allowing a space for candidates to show their value in written form. And oftentimes that happens in the pre screening questions. So at executive level roles, there's often maybe 4 or 5 really detailed questions that they have to answer prior to getting pushed to the next round. So in those questions, an introvert can be as detailed as they need to be, provide so much substance and information that they've obtained from the website and talking to people and putting all of that information in those pre-screening questions. Then that shows their value, their expertise, and it doesn't allow them to have to be face to face. They have time to process and listen and take time to write. And in interviewing and recruiting, I often tell my team, make sure you don't value quantity over quality. We have a lot of people that call 5 times a week. Hey, do I have an update? Do I have an update? Did I get the job? And sometimes you can get weary and just bring the person in. But no, no, no. Make sure that you go for substance instead of quantity. And allowing space for the introvert to thrive. Because if you know that they have what it takes, their resume says it, um, you have to really give them space to thrive and space to show their expertise.
I can add 2 things also to that, Jeri. I think when I talk to my teams of recruiters, I move away from this language of hiring people for fit, right? Like, that's like, you don't talk about that in my presence. So because this is really about finding people who have something to contribute and to add the value that they can bring to our organization, not that they're trying to fit into some box that we are. And so it really, I think, makes the conversation more expansive when you look at the human in front of you and try to understand all of the wonderful gifts and talents that they bring to the table. The other thing that I try to compel my teams to do is to allow people space to think before responding to a question. That you don't get extra credit because you immediately start talking when a question is asked, that you actually can practice like the pause, and that silence is not a bad thing, and that giving people a second to just think about the question and be thoughtful. I actually give extra credit in my mind for people who are thoughtful, because I think when you're actually demonstrating that in an interview, my hope is that that translates to when you're actually in the job also, because if you're going to come work for my organization, you're going to be entrusted with a certain amount of responsibility to do work on behalf of our organization. And my hope is that you're going to be thoughtful, and that you're going to think about the best way to approach situations and to problem solve. And so when a candidate needs space to think before responding in an interview, I don't view that as a bad thing at all. I think it's a really good thing, to allow them a moment.
And I
I
think
would
it's important for introverts to own that pause, own that space. Oftentimes, I've seen extroverts try to fill that space with just mindless chatter, but on the pause, take ownership of it and say, hey, let me take a moment. Let me think about that for a second. And the silence is okay. The silence is fine. Own the silence.
I would add to this from a slightly different point of view. Well, two things. One, from a HR point of view, it's a case of being upfront on the job description, saying this is what the process looks like. This is how much of your valuable time that we are going to take up. Because a lot of organizations are like, we're going to make you jump through 16 hoops. We know you have a job and you kind of want this one and you don't really have time to take hours off, but this is what the process looks like. These are the questions in advance that we're going to do. There's a couple of big oil companies that do a very good job of this and set people up for success. We want you to succeed in the interview because that's when we see the best of you, and therefore it's easier for us to pick the best candidate. So setting people up in advance from a HR process standpoint is really, really important. Those are the changes I've made within organizations. But on another side, I'm on the board for Disrupt HR. And so we get people interviewing to be on stage. And what I've taught our group is letting people have different methodologies to say what it is that they want to say. But we found that our team had a bias towards, well, this person's been on stage 18 times, so they should automatically get through. And what we want is the most disruptive stories, the most things that we don't hear from the different levels, not from the C-suite. We want the admins to talk. We want people who have different stories to talk. And so it's taken time to change people's mindset on what they need to look for when they're interviewing and going through the process of finding people to speak on stage. Because yes, it's about substance, it's about what they're going to talk about, it's about how they're going to change the face of HR, and not just because they're on the speaker circuit and they've done it 18 times.
This is so rich. I just want to add in just talking about the balance that we bring and looking at the individual. So, having a team of all extroverts may not be the most successful, as well as having a team of all introverts. So, we bring the balance, and those extroverts are known for being risk takers. We introverts are known for being risk averse, where we have to say, hey, wait, let a minute, let's wait a minute, let's think about this before we leap. And then the other thing I wanted to add was that extroverts, in terms of interviewing, they are wired to react and to respond. So that is why they jump right in. Whether they know the answer or not, they're going to start talking and build off of it and eventually come to an answer. It may not be the answer, but they will come to an answer. Versus introverts, we are wired to inspect. So that's why we're sitting there thinking, like, where are they really going with this? What do they really want to know? All these things are going through our minds, and it's back also to our neural pathways, which Marty Laney talks about in her book, The Introvert Advantage. She says that extroverts have shorter neural pathways. And so that explains why they jump so quick to an answer, versus introverts have longer neural pathways, where when stimulation comes in and we're processing it, we're bringing in our feelings and our memories, our long-term thinking, long-term memories, and short-term memories to help us come to an answer. So not one way is better or the other. We're just different, and we obviously, I think, need both on teams. And I don't care what kind of environment you're in. So now we want to jump to the other side of um, you got the job. Okay, so introverts, you're perfect, right? So we know you got the job. You're brilliant, you're creative, you're thoughtful, so you got the job. So once you get the job, you're in this new environment. Expectations for you are high. People are trying to analyze you, figure you out, because you may not be the most talkative person. So they're trying to figure you out, they're trying to read you. What do you suggest this new candidate? I'm sorry, this new job hire in their first week or their first month, how do they stay true to themselves, but also find a way to show their stuff? Any advice on that? And then 6 months later, all of that. So let's start from the beginning. What advice would you give them? What do they need to do to shine? Janice,
That
like you have a
there's not a one, right? There's a variety of strategies that I think all of us have used. So I'm very curious to hear this brilliant panel, and how each of us approaches this. But I think I had to come to terms with and be at peace with the fact that I am not going to be the loudest person in the room, and I'm not going to be the first to speak. Like, that's just not how I show up. And instead of beating myself up about that, as I did, I think earlier in my career, like, why can't I be more bold? Like, why can't I speak first, like Jim does? And I'm like, I'm never going to do what Jim does, right? I'm going to listen to all of them, and they're going to talk, talk, talk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to observe, I'm going to synthesize. And my superpower is really around connecting all these dots. And so I lean into that. I lean into being a person who can take a lot of disparate information and synthesize it and help try to create um, some of those connections and synergies across a room of different people, and that becomes the thing that I think people expect from me. But I think when they first see me show up in a new job, they probably think that I'm quiet. They probably wonder what I'm thinking or what I'm about to do, but I don't stay quiet or silent forever. But there is a piece of this where the data collection and understanding the personalities and the norms of different meetings is important for me to know, to sort of, know how to show up. And I think the other piece that I tend to lean into is one-on-one influence, right? And building individual relationships. I spend a lot of time and energy building individual relationships. One, because like that's actually where I'm happiest is in a one-on-one conversation, because people think introverts don't have anything to talk about and that we're not interesting or that we don't want to talk. And I'm like, I could talk to one person who I think is interesting like the whole day. And that's like my happy space. And so leaning into my superpower of, I think, one-on-one influence, it's sort of, I mean, if you think about it in sort of like the political realms, we live in this hyper political environment in the US. It's kind of like coalition building, right? Like I build these sort of individual relationships, and then I'm able to leverage those when we get together as a group, because I know these individual players around the table really well. And so that's something that has served me well. I think especially when you get into the executive realm, because so much about moving as an executive is wrangling personalities and influencing others. Like my children say, what do you do all day? You just talk all day. Or you're on meetings all day? I'm like, no, I'm driving things forward is what I'm doing, right? You're watching an executive drive issues forward. And you do that through relationships and leveraging relational currency. You do that through knowing people as individuals and knowing what motivates them and drives them. You do that through understanding the broader mission and what we're all working towards together. And so I think the combination of one-on-one influence and the ability when you are in a group setting to be able to observe and synthesize and connect the dots are things that I think play very nicely with the introvert's natural disposition.
I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to sort of answer the question, but not really answer the question. And it's going to be from the side of, you mentioned, how do we show up and how do we show people that we're the best person for the job? And a lot of the time you'll find that when people start the job, they set themselves up for failure. I had a client that she started and she's like, said yes to all the meetings, yes to all the projects, put her hands up to all the things because she wanted to prove that, yes, I was the right person for the job. You picked the right human and I'm here for everything. And that's not sustainable, and that leads to burnout. And so that's not what you want to be doing. And so part of this is, preparing as an individual, what boundaries can you set now that will be really helpful for you long term? So if you're the kind of person that needs 2 hours blocked out for deep focus work, set that boundary now, because how you start the job is how people are going to treat you moving forward. So saying, hey, I need this time, please don't put things on my time or my messaging or my favorite method of messaging, or this is what I need, this is how I communicate. Giving people a cheat sheet of how best to work with you is helpful. Stops people guessing, stops people being like, I don't want to talk to her because I don't know. But also, you need to start standing up for yourself now and setting yourself up for success in the future. So setting those boundaries lets people know that you know how you work best, and then you're not necessarily going to mold to whatever it is that they need and they're doing. But also thinking about your energy, because the first 90 days, generally, if you're there, you're working harder, you're thinking, you're learning new things. Think about what you can do to set yourself up for success outside of work, how you can take breaks, how you can nourish yourself, things that will work for you long term is going to be key. So doing that preparation beforehand, thinking, okay, what can I do? What do I need? Will help you. But also, staying true to yourself and doing what works for you. Like you mentioned, there's going to be more than one answer to this. It depends on the job and the role and you. But go ahead, Deidra.
This conversation is so important because I see so many commonalities in my early career and Courtney's early career, speaking up in meetings, not knowing, when to jump in, not knowing if you should jump in, and then going home saying, I should have said this and I should have said that. And why didn't I say this? And I've had that same exact experience. For me, in an executive role, employees have this expectation of who you should be as an executive. They expect for you to be this big voice, and you're walking around pompous and you're the authority. But when they get to know who I am, I've heard a lot of, she's really nice. You can talk to her. She listens. She's normal. Those are the words that I hear. When people come to me and they talk to me before they call, they say, I heard you were nice. So can I have a conversation with you? So it's so important for this space and this conversation, because we need to be able to support one another in these spaces as introverts. I just realized I was an introvert. Every time I tell my family that I'm an introvert, they do not believe me, because I'm close to the extrovert realm, but I can show up. Sometimes in a meeting, I'm quiet. Sometimes in a meeting, I'm talkative. So it just kind of depends on what's going on. As far as standing out, for me, I'm a really good listener. And that's in my personal life and my professional life. I do like small gatherings as opposed to big meetings. I think somebody said in the chat, one-on-one is my jam. Yes, I love one-on-one conversations. That's when I reveal myself. That's when I share. That's when I give information. And I think it's really important to set boundaries for yourself. I've learned that no is a complete sentence. And I've learned how to say that well. Now, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to attend that meeting. No, I don't want to go to that function. No, I prefer to stay home. And sometimes you can say, I'm not going and not have a reason. And it's okay. And it's okay.
Thank you for that. I'm enjoying this conversation so much too. And back on the boundaries, when you're in leadership, you can probably do more for yourselves, and we all are. So, instead of why everybody's booking an hour-long meeting, book a 45-minute meeting, and then take that 15 minutes back for yourself to recharge, to go drink some water, to go eat a little something, or just sit still and listen to your music to get you recharged for the next meeting. I want to throw that in. And also, I'll block my calendar, because people will put meetings on your calendar 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That does not work for me. You will not get the best version of me. Now, if I have to, I will. But when there's a space, I'm going to block it to have my time to get back to me. And I'm still working and it's still in work mode, but I just need some quiet or just some solitude. Even just for 15 minutes, it makes such a huge difference for many of us introverts. Um, I want to talk also about the big win. So I try to get a big win in the first 30 to 45 days. So I said my background is marketing communications. So it's easier for me because when I'm interviewing for a job, I'm like Deidra. I'm all in the website. I'm looking at their press releases. I'm looking at what they are good at, what they're bad at. And so I start thinking before the interview, where are my contacts? How can I get them on the news? How can I get them a radio interview? I do all of that before I get the job. Then, when I get the job, in the first 30 days, I am trying my best to do something to bring something that they don't have or hadn't had. And then that kind of helps people calm down because I think people are anxious and they want to get to know you and they are looking for you to meet expectations for this big role. And so when you do something right away, if you're able in the first 30 to 60 days, then everybody will relax because it's hard for them to read you if you don't want to be read. I think a lot of us, I know Deidra, I work with her. She's been told she has a poker face. I love it. I've been told I had a poker face. I think it's an advantage that people don't know how to read you. Depending in certain positions, that's an advantage. And so you don't want people to read you when you're in HR or when you're in communications. You don't need to read on my face that I'm really panicked and freaking out about this situation. I don't need you to see that. I need to keep that inside. And so all of these things are like assets, I think, that introverts have that we don't even realize that we have. So that's it for me. And then I think, does anyone else want to say anything? Because we just have a few minutes left. So I thought that we would take questions from the audience if anyone has any specific questions. I do want to tie in the Black introvert thing. So when we talk about having a poker face, or Deidra even talked about people will say to her, "Oh, I heard you were nice." I believe, this is my opinion, that when you are an introvert and more of a quieter individual, and people are trying to read you, they misread your quiet as something else. And when you are a person of color, when you are a Black introvert, I think it brings in different stereotypes. And so if they can't read you and you aren't telling them all your business, they automatically think, oh, you must be mean. And I think that's tied to the stereotype of the angry Black woman. Either you're mean, or maybe you're not as smart, or maybe you're not engaged, or maybe you're not a team player. All of these things work against us. And so we have to keep that in mind in these positions. And Sharon, who's the author of Anti-Racism newsletter that I read all the time, y'all need to look that up. Sharon, put that in the chat. Um, we need to find ways. And Sharon's not talking about Black introverts, but I just thought about, we all need to read her newsletter. But back to the Black introverts, we need to keep that in mind because we have to make sure that we are still able to come across in a way. We have to fix that. We have to adjust that. I know that's an extra part-time job for us, but we have to have this knowledge, knowing that people have this idea of who we are. So keeping that in the back of your mind, keep your voice out there, whether it's writing, whether it's on one-on-ones, whether it's having an extrovert a colleague who's your cheerleader. There are all these things that I think can help us be seen in the way that we want to be seen. But there definitely is a stigma. And when you're Black, these misperceptions can come. And so we have to figure out how to combat that and make our introversion work to our advantage. So we have about 10 minutes left. Oh, Sharon did write something about it in her newsletter. So there it is in and Sharon is a game changer. She was on our game changer list. And also I saw Talea. She is Dindy. She is a game changer from our newest list. So are there any questions? Or any additional things you want to share, my lovely panelists? Any advice? So I just got a job. How do I let my light shine? Any additional advice? How do I impress my boss? How do
There's
I lead a
always
team?
some there's always some low-hanging fruits that you can take advantage of when you first start a job. I call it the discovery phase, where you're observing, you're learning people, you're building relationships. And during that process, you find out some things that you can make adjustments to right away. You find out some things that you can correct right away. So focus on those low hanging fruit that can be a big win for you and provide some exposure for you. And they'll see your expertise, they'll see your work, and as time goes on, they'll see your knowledge and your intellect. It comes, and one thing I do want to do is tell all of you, the conversation continues. The conversation continues in regards to introversion versus extroversion and the stereotypes associated with it.
I would say find out what information your boss likes, how they like their information. Are they a spreadsheets person? Are they a written person? Are they a voicemail person? Whatever it is, find out how they like their information, what information is important to them, and send them that information on a regular basis and how you are making the difference to that. Because the better you make them look, the better they look, and you move up together. That was my quick one.
I was good, Janice. That was exactly what I was thinking. Was sort of, I'm looking for the decoder ring early and often, right? Sort of like the decoder ring with my boss. How do they like to receive information? What's important to them? And then usually I'm inheriting a team of people where I'm their new leader and they're skeptical as well. So I'm trying to understand what motivates them, what work they really love, what energizes them, and what they're proud of, and sort of like just sort of build some norms in communication with the people closest to me, and then sort of branch out from there. So I sort of look at it as like who was closest to me, build those relationships, understand the work. To Deidre's point, look for the low-hanging fruit. There's always something when you come in new that like you're like, yep, I can fix that today, right? And begin to build your reputation as someone who is smart and contributes. And then from there, you can begin to fan out and make a bigger impact. But I think start local, make an impact, and then go out from there.
I'd say be curious. All of these things are just be curious, ask questions, don't assume, don't do the things that you don't want people to do to you. People assume you are this person because of X, Y, and Z. Be curious, be open, ask questions. Don't assume.
Thank you. I'm just going through the chat and I see Josh asked, are there any Black introvert professional group outlets? Yeah, so we're going to start one. Watch, it's coming. So I have everybody on here. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for the idea because it makes sense. It's good. Just like there are people here who are in these roles and they know what they do. It's just great to share. It's great to vent. It's great to ask others who may have experienced what you're experiencing now, and get their advice. So I think that we should create one. I think this is the end. I want to see if any of you have anything to add, any projects that you're working on that you'd like to share. If you'd like people to follow you on social media, Deidre, I didn't mention the link to your company because it's my printer is out of ink, so it didn't print. That part didn't print. I know that's janky, but anything you want to share, a
Sure.
website, a podcast,
Sure.
please take the time to share that now.
Please go to signdreamers.com. We provide big, beautiful signs for your yard, for birthdays, new babies, anniversaries, graduations. And also, please go to Amazon to pick up Where's My Mommy's Hair by Deidre Smith. It's a children's book, and it talks about the journey of a child when finding out about a medical condition of one of their parents.
I dropped my coaching business in the chat, which is Lotus Leadership Coaching. And I specialize in coaching women in leadership. So would love to work with anyone who is looking for a leadership coach. I have a broad network of coaching colleagues. I went to Georgetown's leadership coaching program, which was wonderful and transformative in many ways.
And yeah, I dropped my organization in the chat. It's thecareerintrovert.com. We do bridging the gap between introvert and extrovert communication. We have resilient strategy cards. If you're stuck in a meeting and you don't know what to do, the card, you can pull it up. What would an extrovert look at it? how would an introvert look at it, and what you can do to bridge the gap, and the success visibility system, where you have 12 weeks to look at your progress and track it and build your network, and then go off into the world and show how wonderful you are.
Thank you for this wonderful conversation. Thank you for the chat, the questions. Thank you, audience, for attending and believing in us and believing in the power of introverts. And happy Black Introvert Week to everyone. And look forward to an invitation to our Black
Introvert
introvert
leadership group.
professional. Yeah, thanks again, Josh. And I'm going to connect with you later. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week and happy Valentine's Day. Oh, and I'll send the recording. We'll have the recording too.
Um,
Let me stop recording.